I think it's safe to say that the Witcher franchise has become very popular over the last few years. What started as a series of Polish books published during the 90s has since turned into a global phenomenon that has taken over the world by storm. With a popular book series, a video game trilogy that has sold over 50 million copies, and a TV show that Netflix claims is one of its most watched original shows ever, it's a franchise that has been on the rise for some time, and one that stands to grow even more over the next few years. On a personal level, The Witcher has become one of my favorite franchises to read, play, and talk about. I've read each of the books twice now, and played through both The Witcher 2 and Witcher 3 multiple times each. In fact, I would go so far as to say that The Witcher 3 is one of my all-time favorite games. This is a franchise that means a lot to me, and one that I'm very eager to talk more about on this channel. As I've made my way through the books and games again, in preparation for my retrospectives of The Witchers 2 and 3, I've been asking myself what it is about the Witcher franchise that keeps me coming back. I'm certainly no stranger to revisiting something I've really enjoyed, but I want to understand on a deeper level why I feel so strongly about this world and its characters, and why this franchise seems to resonate with so many other people as well. What is it about The Witcher that makes it so compelling? Well, on the surface, I think it's a really cool idea for a fictional universe. Witchers are monster slayers for hire, genetically altered humans who are faster and stronger than a normal person so that they can deal with the monsters they are hired to kill. They have medallions that help them sense magic and danger, eyes like a cat that can help them see in the dark, and an array of potions they brew that help enhance their already impressive physical abilities even further. They're also trained from a young age to be lethal killing machines, masters of both the sword and a simple version of magic they call signs. As a fan of swords, magic, mythical beasts, and the fantasy genre in general, this was something that really spoke to me, and it's what encouraged me to get involved with the series in the first place. The first time I was introduced to The Witcher was the E3 demo of The Witcher 3 from 2014. It was a short demo that showed Geralt tracking down and fighting a griffin, while killing a few bandits along the way. What stood out to me the most about the demo were the things that make The Witcher unique. Geralt used his Witcher senses to track down the griffin by its blood after it had been injured. He walked around with 2 swords on his back and fought opponents using a cool combination of acrobatic sword moves and devastating magical abilities. There was also a short dialogue exchange between Geralt and a woman he saves, which hinted at a narrative-focused game. These things really piqued my interest as a fan of both fantasy games and RPGs in general, and ultimately convinced me to give the Witcher series a shot. In order to prepare myself for The Witcher 3, I decided to play the earlier games in the series. Since I didn't and still really don't play any games on my PC, I ended up playing The Witcher 2 as my first Witcher game instead of the first title in the trilogy, which was and still is exclusive to the PC. While I had no familiarity with the series other than that brief demo I saw, I found it fairly easy to grasp the basics of The Witcher 2's gameplay and gain a decent understanding of the world of The Witcher. I suddenly found myself hunting down and slaying monsters using the same cool sword and magic techniques I saw in the demo. I learned about how witches are able to consume potions and elixirs that would kill most people in order to temporarily improve their attributes, and I set about brewing my own potions and oils to make Geralt a more effective fighter. I also learned about the different Witcher signs like Ard, Igni, and Quen, and how best to use them in combat. Running around shooting fireballs at enemies or knocking them to the ground was extremely satisfying, and I found myself using these cool abilities frequently throughout my playthrough. I began buying and crafting weapons and armor tailored for the Witcher's unique combat systems, keeping in mind that steel swords are meant for people and silver swords are meant for monsters. Overall, the gameplay turned out to be as fun and engaging as I thought it would be, and I quickly grew fond of the game's unique RPG mechanics. When The Witcher 3 finally came out, it proved to be even better than the second game from a gameplay perspective, and would go on to further my love for the series. The third game gave you even more freedom to play the way you wanted to play, providing a diverse array of skills, abilities, and equipment to choose from. Witcher signs were given alternate versions that opened up Geralt's gameplay options, and different Witcher armor sets were scattered throughout the game's world that really allowed you to customize your gameplay experience if you took the time to track them down. Speaking of the game's world, The Witcher 3 provided a beautiful open world that encouraged you to explore the farthest reaches of the continent. It had you trekking through monster-infested swamplands, making your way through crowded and bustling cities, and sailing between the pirate islands of Skellige. It was a wonderful world to explore, and it still remains one of my favorite open worlds in all of gaming. The combat also felt a lot smoother, feeling less stiff than combat in The Witcher 2, as well as more diverse thanks to a deeper skill system. And your Witcher senses were significantly improved from The Witcher 2, turning you into a detective as you used the ability to solve mysteries and hunt down your targets. From a gameplay perspective alone, these Witcher games are worth revisiting time and time again because they are just a ton of fun to play through. But The Witcher is about more than just cool sword fights and hunting monsters, more than just magic and deep RPG mechanics. What really makes The Witcher so interesting for me, and I think a lot of other people as well, is its excellent storytelling, characters, themes, and overall world building. While I was running around cutting down monsters and bandits, I was also taking the time to speak to the various NPCs I came across, both minor and important. I enjoyed listening to these characters talk about not only The Witcher's history and lore, but also about their specific hopes, dreams, and opinions on the game's events. I talked with Yarp and Zigrin about the Battle of Brenna, the battle from the final Witcher book where the North banded together and defeated Menno Cohorn and the army of Nilfgaard. I spoke with the Crinford Reavers about the hunt for the Golden Dragon from the book Sword of Destiny. I listened to sorceresses like Yennefer, Triss, and Philippa discuss the intricacies of magic and how it works in the world of The Witcher. It was all fascinating to listen to, and it deepened both my understanding and appreciation for this fictional world. While speaking to these characters, I also got a sense for the themes that these Witcher games and books discuss. One of the most defining aspects of The Witcher is how its world is presented as grey instead of black and white. There's a lot of philosophizing about the morality and ethics of different actions, about what really constitutes good and evil, and what separates people from monsters. There are constant problems and struggles throughout both the books and the games where neither side is particularly attractive, where neither side is entirely good or entirely evil. Even the worst people can have some redeeming qualities, and even the best people make bad choices every now and then. It's one of the things that really intrigues me about the world of The Witcher, and I think what helps it stand out from many other fictional worlds. This grey mentality is actually best represented in one of The Witcher short stories from the book The Last Wish. Titled The Lesser Evil, it describes an encounter Geralt has in the town of Blaviken with a sorcerer named Stregobor and a woman named Renfri, who is bent on seeking revenge against the sorcerer. Stregobor once tried to have Renfri, a former princess, killed because he believed her to be a dangerous mutant that would cause havoc if left alive. Renfri ends up surviving the attempt on her life and goes on the run, enduring hardship after hardship and vowing to take revenge on the people who wronged her. While Renfri certainly appears to be a victim here, she has committed violent and potentially unforgivable actions in her effort to survive and take revenge, making her far less innocent than her circumstances would have you believe. Both the sorcerer and the woman try to convince Geralt separately to help them take the other party out, arguing that doing so should be viewed as the lesser evil compared to the alternative, which would involve the slaughter of the townspeople by Renfri in an attempt to force Stregobor out of his tower. Geralt initially refuses both Stregobor and Renfri, arguing that there is no such thing as a lesser evil. A famous quote of his from this short story states, "Evil is evil, Stregobor. Lesser, greater, middling, it's all the same. Proportions are negotiated, boundaries blurred. I'm not a pious hermit, I haven't done only good in my life, but if I'm to choose between one evil and another, then I prefer not to choose at all." Witchers are famed for their neutrality, usually refusing to choose sides in both politics and in general arguments. They exist to safeguard the people from monsters and other supernatural dangers, nothing more. This is something that Geralt repeats often throughout the books, yet oftentimes contradicts because of his own personal moral code. In the end, he usually can't stand by and watch people suffer or be killed, which is exactly what happens in this story. Geralt eventually decides to protect the townspeople from Renfri and her gang after failing to convince them to stand down. He fights and ultimately kills the gang, thus choosing the so-called lesser evil. However, even though he saved them, the townspeople throw stones at Geralt and drive him out of town, giving him the nickname the Butcher of Blaviken. This is the kind of grey storytelling that fascinates me about The Witcher, the kind of storytelling that keeps bringing me back to this amazing world. The Lesser Evil short story is the perfect example of the kind of moral and ethical dilemmas that Geralt and his companions are forced to face throughout both the books and the games, and I think it does a great job of setting the tone and overall feel for the world of The Witcher. Now, The Witcher isn't the first and only piece of media to present its story and characters as grey instead of black and white. There have been plenty of games, books, movies, and TV shows that have portrayed similar moral and ethical dilemmas. However, I think what helps The Witcher stand out from many of those other properties is its excellent storytelling and character development. It doesn't just portray the world as grey and leave it at that. The Witcher series uses that grey perspective to tell good and thought-provoking narratives that sees characters change throughout them. Geralt's famed neutrality is constantly put to the test throughout the books to the point where he eventually realizes that a person can't actually be neutral in the end, something that Ciri tries to convince him of early on. Ciri herself is forced into her own moral dilemmas as she tries to take revenge on the men who have pursued her and killed her friends. The racism and animosity between humans and non-humans leads to numerous bloody conflicts where neither side is exactly innocent and clean. Organizations like the Lodge of Sorceresses or the Special Forces and Intelligence Agencies of the Northern Kingdoms try to manipulate events towards what they believe is in everyone's best interest, even if that results in certain people getting hurt in the process. There's a lot of grey to be found in this world, and watching the main characters of this series navigate their way through it all is one of the most enjoyable parts of The Witcher. Geralt of Rivia is the underappreciated hero, the Witcher who defends people from monsters for money. He is constantly mistreated and labeled as a mutant and a freak by the people he protects, despite the fact that he keeps them safe from the plethora of monsters and supernatural forces that plague the continent. Even though he is despised by many simply because he's different, Geralt still abides by a personal moral code and tries to do the right thing when he can, though he holds a fairly cynical view of the world as a result of the things he's seen and the way he's been treated. Yennefer of Vengerberg is a powerful sorceress with a commanding presence. She oftentimes comes off as cold and heartless, but in reality she is actually a decent person that just wants to be happy. For her, that means having a child and being a mother, something that most sorceresses are unable to do. She spends much of her time trying to find a solution to this, but ultimately never finds an answer. That is, until Geralt asks her to help train the young princess of Cintra in the ways of magic. After spending a lot of time teaching her to use magic, Yennefer becomes a sort of mother figure for Ciri, granting Yennefer her wish in quite an unexpected way. Her relationships with both Geralt and Ciri actually make her a better person over the course of the books, as she works to protect them both from the various groups and people that would seek to do them harm. Ciri is the child of destiny, the carrier of the elder blood that is central to the plot of both the Witcher books and The Witcher 3. She's orphaned at a young age and taken in by Geralt after becoming bound to him by destiny through the law of surprise. She's forced to grow up very quickly, taught to fight like a witcher and wield magic like a sorceress. Because of her blood, various groups are constantly trying to get their hands on her in order to either control her or obtain her power. This takes a toll on her throughout the books, leading her to make difficult decisions and ride an emotional roller coaster as she wrestles with the concepts of morality, ethics, and the forces of good and evil. Each of these characters is broken in their own way, but they end up bound to each other by destiny and form a sort of adoptive family. The relationship becomes such a critical part of this series' story, and is part of the reason why I think the overall series' narrative works so well. However, those main characters are not the only people who matter in The Witcher. In fact, many of the side and secondary characters oftentimes steal the show when they make an appearance. The bard Dandelion is intelligent and entertaining, able to provide witty remarks for amusement and serve as a moral compass and friend for Geralt. The sorceress Triss Merigold is bubbly and sweet, serving as both a big sister for Ciri and a secondary love interest for Geralt. The dwarves Yarpen Zigrin and Zoltan Chevet are both rambunctious and blunt, providing some of my favorite conversations from both the books and the games. And that barely scratches the surface of the many great characters you'll encounter in this universe. There's Regis, Kahir, Milva, Vilgefort, Sponhart, Philippa Eilhart, Dijkstra, Yorvith, Vernon Roach, and many, many more. These characters are not only well written, they are captivating to interact with and read about. They incentivize you to want to immerse yourself in this world because you genuinely grow to either care about them or to want to learn more about them. I guess what I'm trying to say with all of this is that there are a lot of good reasons why people are so drawn to The Witcher. The games have excellent gameplay and mechanics and are just straight up fun to play. The great perspective of the series allows for some very thought-provoking narratives that blur the lines between what's good and what's evil, what's right and what's wrong. And both the books and the games are filled with well-written characters and captivating storylines that get you deeply invested in this wonderful franchise. This is a truly remarkable world that Andrzej Sapkowski created back in the 80s and 90s, and that CD Projekt Red brought to life with these video games. There are so many great reasons to love The Witcher that it's no wonder the franchise has become so popular over the last few years. What started for me as a simple interest in a gameplay demo has turned into a lifelong obsession with this fascinating world and its abundance of likable characters and enjoyable stories. The games and their gameplay are what drew me to the series in the first place, but it's the world, storytelling, and characters that keep me coming back for more.